Welcome to Sandwich Chamber Presents, a program that showcases the members of the Sandwich Chamber of Commerce. With me here is Peter Smith from the Sandwich Antique Center. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Joe.
It's great to have you on board. Tell us about your business. Where you got started. Sandwich Antique Center is located right on the corner of Main Street in Jarvis, or Route 6A in Jarvis,
Right.
I should say, in the center of Sandwich. And how long have you been there?
Wow, 13, 14 years ago, I think. I bought it from Russell Johnson.
Russell Johnson.
Yeah, I was a dealer there for years prior, and I think Russell got a little bored with it and approached me with the idea of purchasing it from him, which I did.
So you were a dealer for how long? How long have you been in this business?
I'd been doing it for 5 or 6 years prior to that, so I'm getting up there towards 20 years being an antique dealer now.
And how'd you get started in this? How does that happen?
That's a good question. It sort of evolved. It wasn't really planned. I mean, when I was a kid, my mother used to drag me around to auctions, and she was an art dealer and agent, and so I had a little bit of knowledge about the concepts of buying and selling and presenting and auctions and that kind of thing. Started off in retail when I was a kid, selling stereo equipment. Started doing that when I was about 16 years old, and stayed in retail up until I got into the antiques business.
So you like making the deal, making the
Yeah,
transaction.
I was always that kid growing up,
Right.
making trades and cutting deals and swapping things around and bobbing and weaving, And so yeah, it's in me.
Now I went through your store several times, been in there a few times, and there's a myriad of items, from guns to glass, lots of glassware, clocks. I go into the clocks. Who actually winds those? Because they were all ticking, and there's no plugs on them.
Yeah. Well, a number of the clocks, the staff, whoever's working that day, and some of them only need to be wound once a week, and then a lot of the clocks are presented by separate dealers. The way the Antique Center works is it's broken up into spaces. I have over 100 dealers in there that I rent space to, anywhere from a 3 or 4 square foot glass case to some of them have 20 by 30 feet of floor space in there. So each dealer represents what it is that they do, maybe what they like to do. So there's different flavors as you walk around the store. About 30% of the inventory there is mine,
Okay.
and in no particular place. So really have two businesses. One is renting out and representing dealers and selling their wares, and then also buying and selling antiques myself.
And that's where your job gets very interesting to me, because you're not just a store waiting for someone to come in. You're actually going out and getting it, and through several different means.
Well, having a store or stores that are large enough that they require the staff, they sort of run themselves. I'm at both stores every day, but I don't spend my days there. My job is harvesting. I'm out there. People's houses, people bring me things that I meet at maybe either one of the shops, go to a number of auctions. So I'm on the road pretty much every day.
And you mentioned stores. You also have a store in Plymouth.
A year ago, we opened up. I bought a building downtown Main Street, right across from San Diego's. It was built as a bank in 1875. Beautiful building, big red brick building with white columns out front. And so on the first floor, I opened a business called The Exchange. The idea was the Antique Center is a sort of a hardcore antique store, and we're very specific about what's in there. We don't want new things, no reproductions, generally no 20th century items. So in my travels and going to these houses and all of these things and places that I go to, I come across a lot of very interesting things that aren't necessarily antique. So in the back of my head for years was that idea of having another store where I can sell what I refer to, and as my sign says, objects of interest, and without limitations. So it really could be anything as long as it's interesting and of course saleable. So if you were to walk into the Exchange in Plymouth, you'd see a completely different flavor than you do in Sandwich. I don't rent space out to dealers, but I do take things in on consignment. So the inventory is either mine or consigned, but allows me to lay it out a certain way. It's a very sort of gallery-like environment out there, and it's only a year old, but it's very refreshing being able to go out there and just buy things based on form and appeal and saleability and not specifically or just antiques. So it's a new thing for me that I'm really enjoying.
That's the part that intrigues me the most. When you go out and you see these items, whether it is at an auction, because I know you go to the auctions, you go to the sandwich auction here, and others, I assume.
Oh yeah, lots of
And
them.
you're pulling up the states. How do you know what has value, what's going to sell, and what is that value? How do you figure that out?
Well, you don't always know. I mean, the most valuable thing that you can have in this business, some would argue that is knowledge, but I think it's really more intuition, because no matter how much knowledge you have, you're not going to know everything. And that's one of the greatest things about this business is you're constantly running into things you've never seen before. I mean, consider what definition of an antique is anything man-made that's over 100 years old. So anything throughout the course of time that was made is an antique. So
Right.
consider what that encompasses, and the idea of running into or seeing things you've never seen before is just the way the business operates. So it's really an intuitive thing. Some people have an eye, some people don't. There aren't very many people that can make a living in the antiques business. The ones that do tend to have that call it gut feeling, intuition, whatever it is, but you need that to be successful at this.
So intuitively, you know, it's something interesting, something somebody's going to want to buy.
Well,
where do you get that?
Of course, you
value?
do see a lot of things that you have seen before, so you have experience with what they're going to sell for. You know, furniture, for example. You have a pretty good idea because you know how old it is or where it's from and the condition and blah, blah, blah. So you can pretty much put two and two together and know roughly what you're going to get for it. But to take a piece of art or sculpture or a painting, I mean, when you have a 200-year-old painting, it's unsigned, you don't know who did it, but you like it or you don't like it. And so trying to arrive at values based on how saleable it is, as in how attractive it is and how much somebody else might like it, that's where the intuition comes into it. Also, trying to, you know, often to be successful in this business, you have to be able to buy and sell things that you don't like. Things that don't interest you personally, but you know that other people are interested. So that's, I think, probably the biggest roadblock for people that are trying to be in the antiques business is they focus on things that they like. They'll go to an auction, pick things out that they're going to buy, and often pay too much for them and have too much focus on their own taste and not the concept of just buying and selling.
But if they aren't there individuals that focus on certain items, such as military items, and that's all they focus on.
There are a lot of
Exactly.
dealers that have areas of expertise. You know, you could say mine would be art, and followed by furniture maybe. But those dealers that tend to have very specific or precise areas that they focus on tend to more be hobbyists, dealers on the side. Rarely do you find a full-time dealer that just does one thing, except for maybe an art dealer would be an exception to that. But people that are in the antiques business, see, the thing is you may be looking for one specific thing, but in your hunt, you're going to come across all sorts of other things.
Sure.
So even the people that do have an area that they focus on, they always sort of bleed out into other worlds anyways. So
Now, you must have a network of these experts, these specialists, where you come across a piece that you're not 100% sure of. Do you call them in and bring them in to take a look at it for you? Is that
yeah,
part of
that's
what you
key.
do?
That is key. Is finding out what you have. There's a lot of people that are in this business that make a living out of shopping antique stores and buying things that are undervalued by dealers that potentially didn't do their due diligence and therefore, you know, underpriced their items. So that's an important thing. And again, it's almost that intuitive thing. You pick something up and it's like, this might be pretty good, you know, and you're not always sure. And yes, and it's great to be known, and it's great to have a network, as you put it. And I know just about everybody in this business in New England, and can pretty much find out what I need to know about certain things. And
Do you rely on the internet much for that information, or is that too?
the internet is
distant.
is almost become a required element in this business. It hurts the business, and it helps the business. It helps from a research point of view, where you can, you know, if you can type in a certain make and model, and you can easily find out value of something. You can't put in something that is art based and arrive at value that way, unless of course you're looking at a particular artist. But on the other hand, though, the internet has been a source for people that have these things that they go to, and they often think they have something that they don't have. And it also takes away, people know what they have, and they often go directly to that source to sell it, and bypass me,
Right.
the dealer. So it works for and against.
Where do you get your clients? I mean, how do your customers come through? Is it just through the store, or do you have people that
Initially, when
know
I bought the store, I relied a lot on advertising, especially Yellow Pages back then, and people would bring things into the store, and but the calls that I get have just snowballed. I get calls pretty much every day now, and that's just from having done it for such a long time. And I think I've made one or two people happy out there, and I get it's mostly referrals now.
So you're not only selling product to in your store, through your stores, you also have people that you sell to directly. How about auctions? Do you get involved in selling on the auctions? We know you buy.
When often I'll go into a house, or let's say via a lawyer, in a estate situation, I have to buy the entire contents of the house. I may only want 15 or 20% of it to go into either one of the stores. So the other items may be of value. I mean, sometimes there's cars involved and other things that are really not my turf. So it's really about knowing how to sort of divvy things up and where things should go and who to call and how to maximize your return based on liquidation of whatever that may be. So, sometimes I will see something or get something, and I know who's going to want it or who's going to buy it from me, and I can just call them up and sell it over the phone. Or it goes into the store. We do sell some things on the internet, and yes, I do put things through auction as well.
I remember one time we were on the phone, this is a year or so ago, and you were at, I believe it was Christie's auction, and you had sold a scabbard of some sort. Was that, does that ring a bell? A painting.
Yeah.
A painting.
Yeah.
And so you go to those higher end auctions when you have a piece that demands that kind of attention?
Often I will sell things through, some of the better auctions. Certain things, that painting was an English painting, and actually it went to London because that's where it's worth the most, so that's where it was sent. Skinner is another company that has done well for me in the past, and so sometimes if you're selling things at auction and they're of some substance, it's just fun to go and watch what it goes for. But of course, you can always see it all live online too. So it's not really business if I go to an auction to watch my own things sell.
That's entertainment and a night out in
Yes.
Boston.
Yeah, maybe, yes, right. Yeah.
So the auctions are very different. When you say it went to England, somebody was bidding online or over the phone. Is that how that works?
No, it just goes back to what I said before. You get something and you know where it should go based on who's going to pay the most for it. This was a hunt scene by a British painter where most of the paintings are sold, in England, and that's where the value is. The British love their, sort of fox hunting scenes,
Sure.
and this particular painter. So that's where it went, and it did very well.
And it's worth packing it up and shipping it over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this case it was, yeah. Yeah.
Nice. So you must come across some pretty amazing items as far as history goes.
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's a difficult thing to answer if that was a question. But yeah, I mean, you come across everything. And what I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about, what's so much fun about this business is sometimes you just come across things that you just love. I mean, you develop a passion for them. And for me, at least, it's really unrelated to value. Some of my favorite things that I own, if I walk around my house, are of very little value, but I love them.
Right.
So, being able to maintain that passion for art and objects is really a very satisfying thing about this business.
And you certainly surround yourself by auctions. Your home is an antique home.
Yep.
It has several different eras of in different sections that are different vintage, starting back in 1712, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
What, my house or
Yeah, your home.
my objects?
Your home. Your home.
Yeah.
The original piece, and then additions on to that in future years. Your establishment in the center of Sandwich, the Antique Center, is quite old structure as well, I believe, and goes back to
1839.
1839.
Yeah.
What was its original use?
That was Main Street, Jarvis Street. I mean, that was the main street coming up from the glass factory up to Main Street. So that was where most of the action was. And the little building that doubled to two-story section, the first floor it was tobacco, and it was all sorts of various retail outlets over the decades. And the second floor, not originally, but starting in the 1850s, was a photography studio.
And you already mentioned the Exchange in Plymouth was also
Built
in
as
the
a
1800s.
bank
Built as a
in
bank.
1875. So all the original vaults are there, and this place is built like a bank. I mean, it's 17-inch thick brick walls all the way around, and it's just, I love that building.
That's cool. No one can
Yeah.
hear you scream.
Yeah.
So day to day, what is your day like? And
What is my day like?
give me maybe a couple different days. What's typical?
Well, I mean, I'll give you the seven, sort of levels. I actually call them the 7 levels of satisfaction in the antiques business. I mean, the first is the hunt. It's the find. It's the seeking out. So whether you're going to a house, whether you're meeting somebody at the store, whether you're going to an auction, estate sale, yard sale. So that's the first thing, is the hunt, and that all by itself is exciting. And then second to that is the find, the discovery. You buy something, and which of course by itself is exciting. And then the third level is, if you don't already know, finding out what you have, researching, or it also might be cleaning, fixing, or repairing, or just determining what it is. And then once you've done that, then there's the bringing it to market. So, you put it in your car or your truck, and you set it up on the shelf and put a price tag on it and walk away, and I mean, that feels good too.
Sure.
So, and then of course, somebody negotiates, somebody buys it, and it sells. So, each one of those steps is satisfying in its own way. Of course, sometimes they can backfire on you.
Sure.
You can pay too much for things. You can lose money on things. You can buy fakes and not know it. There's a lot of potential for errors to be made. And if you're going to be in this business, you have to be able to roll with that stuff and not get too excited, because it's going to happen.
What was your biggest faux pas? I know I know you got to remember it.
My biggest. I actually,
No.
you know what? I go into denial
You
about
back
them.
off. You throw it
When-
away.
When I make a mistake, I get rid of the thing or whatever it is. I don't leave it around, so I don't have to look at it, and I get rid of it. I sell it at an auction. I just get rid of it if it's an error, so I can move on and remain optimistic. So.
Smart.
Yeah, but no, I've made lots of mistakes. And as a dealer friend said to me once, his New Year's resolution was going to be that he's going to make less mistakes this year in being an antiques dealer. And I said to him, well, then you're going to make less money, because
Right.
you can't be careful in this business. As long as when you throw the dice, which you have to throw the dice all the time, as long as you win more than you lose, then you're going to be ahead. But if you try and be that super careful, research, and don't go with your intuition, don't jump when you see something, then you're never going to make a real go at it.
So it's gambling. You're gambling at it with a lot of knowledge behind you.
I think it is. There are people that are in this business that are attracted to that aspect of it, and there seems to be an element of gamblers. I mean, I'm not a gambler, but I guess I am, because I'm in the antiques business. But on the other hand, it's not really gambling if the odds are in your favor, is it? So.
Now, you mentioned restoration of art, and I do believe Judy, your wife Judy, does some of that.
Judy
correct?
is a painter herself, and on the
Very
second.
nice, very fine painter.
Thank you. Yes,
Nice work.
she is. On the second floor of the Antique Center, she's got her studio. So she's one of the best around at restoring antique oil paintings. She's done work for some of the bigger auction houses and lots of the big dealers around, and she just has a particular skill, and that's a very interesting thing for her to do after 30 years of nursing, and so she's doing something that she's passionate about as well.
Fantastic. So
And a very handy service for me too. I mean,
Right.
sometimes transforming a painting can be a bigger transformation than refinishing a piece of furniture. And I get paintings with holes and tears and half the paint's missing, and Judy can resurrect them.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very detailed work, I imagine.
Not always, but it takes a natural talent. I mean, she's one of those people that can just mix paint and get the color perfect every time. And, you know, some people will spend years in Italy going to school to try and learn what she can just do right out of the box.
Nice. Now, you've been around here 20 years doing this business, and I understand you had some national attention not so long ago.
National attention. Oh, you mean? Well, I was the on-screen expert for that show, Auction Hunters.
Auction Hunters on Spike.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah. Came out last July. It was their Beantown edition, and they had asked me to come on screen to talk about a whale gun that they had found. So that was a pile of fun, actually. They've been playing it twice a week, every week since last July. So everywhere I go, I'm surprised how many people see that show.
Is it you or the whale gun that's driving that?
It's got to be me, Joe.
So with all these vendors, these dealers in your establishment at the Antique Center, Sandwich Antique Center, how do you pick them, or is it open? Do you screen them? Because it all looks like it's, from what I can tell, and I'm an extreme novice, it all looks like it's pretty quality stuff. I mean, you have the little tin toys, china. That's, like you said, there's furniture there.
Sandwich is considered to be the most high-end of the group shops or multi-dealer shops. Pretty much, I don't want to get cocky and say New England, but it's one of the best. So we represent the area's better and best dealers. So unlike a lot of those stores that are a little bit more general, we don't allow everybody in there. We are careful about the dealers who we represent, and try and maintain that level of quality, which I think has really been the key to our success. And the dealers that bring that kind of quality there really appreciate the fact that we have that attitude, and it just tends to, flow into more dealers of that caliber. So it's a pretty successul little store.
You find people come through just to view it as a museum, where they're just looking at history?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, especially during tourist season, you can have 500 people through those doors in a day, and then look at your sales and go, man, I worked really hard. So there's a lot of people that come there just because they're fascinated, and a lot of people come in there and spend half their day. And of course, buy nothing. But,
right.
But I don't mind that. I mean, I do the same thing. It's a fascinating place to walk around.
It is. And I think you mentioned the Auction Hunters. There's shows on TV, the Antique Roadshow, where antiques are more and more prevalent in the mainstream media than ever before. So I think there's a lot of that's probably driving people to come through, and hopefully purchase more.
There's an interest that with the Antiques Roadshow brought out an interest in people trying to figure out what they owned or what they had of their own. Antiques generally suffered as a result of the economy and real estate being such as it is, because especially when you're selling decorative things for your house and there's not a lot going on in terms of real estate transactions, that had a big effect on us.
Sure.
And also there was a sort of a sway in the pendulum. The antiques business is very fashion oriented, and a lot of people wouldn't really stop to consider that, but it is. Certain things get hot, and then they're not. You might recall back in the '80s when everybody wanted a spinning wheel. And we could get $600 or $700 for a spinning wheel, and now we can't get $50 for them. So, some things get hot, and then they're not, and which makes it kind of fun in a way, but always changing.
So you have to be careful not to pile up on one type of thing, because it could go cold pretty quickly.
Well, yeah, and having a store gives me a great advantage. I talked before about intuition and knowledge and all that stuff, but really it's just seeing what other people buy has probably helped me more than anything. So being in an environment like that where you just watch what people are stepping up to pay for, so it makes it a lot easier for me to know what to look for.
Yeah, just to step back, we know you've been in the business for 20 years. How long have you been in Sandwich, and how did you end up here?
I actually bought the store before I moved here. So we bought the house on the corner of 6A and Quaker Meeting House 12 years ago. I bought the store 13 years ago.
Okay.
How did I end up here?
Two major actions going on, because
Yeah.
that house you're in now needed a ton of work, and
Oh, yeah.
you
yeah,
restored that back
spent-
beautifully.
Spent a lot of years and a lot of money fixing that place up. But yeah, how I ended up here was, well, I told you I started off selling stereos when I was a kid, and by the time I was 19, I was managing one of their stores, and by the time I was 21, I was managing a bunch of their stores, and then pretty successful in retail, and then later on I became a retail management consultant. So, moved around. I've lived in different places in California and New Jersey and New York, and working for companies for short periods of time and helping them with staff and marketing and just management. So that's what I did, and it was a very sort of transient existence, fun, lucrative. So my wife Judy and I really have had a good time. And then Judy got pregnant, and our kid was born, and you know what that does to you.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
like
Things
everything
do change
changes
somewhat.
Yeah,
Somewhat.
yeah. And oddly, we were moving up here from New Jersey, and I had a contract to work for Cambridge Soundworks for a 12-month period as a consultant. And as we're driving up here, they went public that weekend. So they sold out and became a public company over that weekend. And I thought my contract was ironclad, and I thought it was all, because you plan those things well in advance. And so as I'm driving up here, they went public, and I get here on Monday, and they're like, sorry, we're not going to use you after all.
Ouch.
Yes, yeah. So that kind of hurt, and nothing much I could do, and I was the new guy in town, and so and Bailey had just been born.
Your daughter Bailey was just
Yes,
born.
yeah. So Judy and I took that first year off, which I'm so glad we did. And then throughout that time, started to get a little bit more interested in the antiques thing, and it just sort of spiraled. And I did a little bit of buying and selling, and then thought, wow, this is kind of fun, and maybe I have some skills, and it just sort of started to flow and started to fly, and sort of one thing led to another, and before you know it, I'm renting space all over the state, and I'm at every auction there is, and just buying and selling like a crazy person, and it worked out. And it worked out well enough that Russell offered me the store years later.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice journey.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fun. And how long this is a chamber show, so how long have you been a member in the chamber, and how's that been?
Since they got underway, since the Sandwich Chamber started.
And has done well by you?
I think they're great. I've been to a lot of other chamber events, and Kate Bevelak does a fantastic job. I mean, you remember the chamber.
Sure.
The Sandwich Chamber is just the most fun
Yeah.
of them all, and it's the most varied. There's a lot of interesting people involved. Nobody takes insult to this, but it's not all bankers and insurance salesmen.
Sure.
There's a lot of very interesting people there, and I do enjoy it. And so, yeah, of course they've done well for me, and I hope for them as well, and speaking well of them. So.
Well, Peter, thanks for being on the show. It's been a pleasure to interview you and learn more about what you do. And for our members watching the show, for everybody, you can visit Peter's shop at the corner of Route 6A in Jarvis, the Sandwich Antique Center, and the Exchange in Plymouth is on
44 Main Street.
44 Main Street, right?
Right across from Sam Diego's, right in the absolute heart of Plymouth.
So do you recommend having the margarita before you go into the shop?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so that'll work. Thanks again for joining us.
All right, Joe, thank you.
You can watch the show here on Channel 13, or we're on sandwichtv.org, on Sandwich Chamber. You can check us out on Facebook. We're out there. Thanks for joining us. Have a good day.